My heels clicked across the office floor as I stepped into the Monday leadership meeting, coffee in hand, slides prepped, ready to discuss next phase rollout. I didn't even notice the shift in the room until I saw the extra chair at the head of the table. And then Diana's voice rang out. We're restructuring. Brandon will be stepping into your role, Ava, effective immediately. I blinked. Thought I misheard. Sorry, what? Her face didn't flinch. You've done tremendous work, but my son Brandon will be leading the product division moving forward. I didn't move. Couldn't move. Last Thursday, I'd stood right here presenting the final demo, the one that landed our biggest investor. We'd all popped champagne. Diana hugged me so tight I could feel her heartbeat. Now her eyes didn't even meet mine. Brandon, barely out of college and still smelling like entitlement, gave me a smug nod. I'll be counting on your notes to help me transition smoothly, he said. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not out of humor, out of disbelief. This has to be a joke, I said, voice tight. I saved this company. You all saw it. Diana leaned forward, her voice syrupy. You've done more than enough, Ava. Take this as a new opportunity for rest. Rest my mind spun. 5 years of grinding. A prototype I bled into. Investor pitches that made my hands shake. Late nights when I slept on the office couch because I didn't have time to commute home. And now they were handing it over to a man who once asked me how Bluetooth worked. I left the room numb. Didn't hear the rest of the meeting. Didn't feel the goodbye hugs from the few stunned coworkers who dared look my way. By noon, my company email was gone. My keycard beeped red. I packed my things in silence. My desk wasn't fancy, just a row of notebooks, a dying succulent, and a photo of me and Diana arms linked at our last product launch. She once said, "You're the backbone of this company." Now she couldn't even say goodbye in person. I carried the box to the parking lot. Cold wind cut through my jacket. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stood there looking down at the cracked lid of the moving box. Discarded. Humiliated. Used. A voice inside me whispered, "You should have seen this coming." But I didn't want to believe it. Not until now. I sat in the car, fingers trembling on the wheel. Then I reached into my folder and pulled out a sheet I'd nearly forgotten my original patent filing, my name, my documentation, dated and signed long before the company even had a logo. They had taken my job, but they didn't realize they'd built their future on something that didn't belong to them. And in that moment, the humiliation curdled into something else, sharp, clear, electric. Resolve. They thought they'd erased me, but they didn't know what I still owned. They didn't know I wasn't done. And they definitely didn't know what I was about to do next. The first time I stepped into Diana's office, it didn't even have chairs that matched. The walls were bare, her desk a scratched leftover from some defunct law firm, and the coffee machine groaned louder than it brewed. She laughed when she saw me dressed in my best blazer. "We're not fancy here, Ava. We're fighters." I believed her. I joined as a consultant, unpaid at first, said I'd stay for 3 months. I stayed for 5 years. In those early days, it was chaos. Sleepless nights code that crashed more than it ran, endless redesigns. I slept under my desk more times than I care to admit. Diana and I would share cold takeout venting about beta testers and bug reports. We even had a little ritual. Whenever we hit a milestone, she'd pour cheap Prosecco into paper cups and toast to grit. She called me the backbone of the company. I wore that title like armor. I fought tooth and nail for every breakthrough, skipped family holidays, canceled 2 anniversaries, missed my sister's engagement dinner. But it was worth it, I thought. We were building something that mattered. I remember the day I mortgaged my apartment to fund third phase testing. Diana tried to talk me out of it. "It's too much," she said. "You don't have to do this." But I saw the numbers. Knew what this tech could be. If we don't believe in it enough to risk something, I told her, why should anyone else? She hugged me like I was her own daughter. Her voice cracked when she said, "One day, Ava, this will all pay off." I trusted her. Not just as a CEO, but as a friend, a mentor. At her wedding, she made a speech thanking me for carrying the weight of a dream when no one else would. People clapped. I cried. She once told a reporter I was the heart behind the product. It made headlines, but over time something shifted. Subtle at first. She stopped showing me drafts of investor decks, told me she'd loop me in later. When we launched our beta, my name wasn't mentioned in the press release. She said it was for branding clarity. I let it go. After all, we were a team. Then came the equity conversation. She promised me 2%. I didn't press for a contract, just a handshake. Because back then, a promise from Diana meant more than paper. But the paperwork never came. I told myself she was just busy, that she hadn't forgotten. That lie held me together through the worst of it. Until last week when I stood on that stage and demoed the product that would change everything. And now I see it clearly. I was never the partner. I was the scaffolding meant to hold everything up until they didn't need me anymore. The betrayal didn't just sting, it tore through years of loyalty, of sacrifice, of blind trust. She didn't just take my job, she shattered the story I told myself about what we were building and who we were to each other. But if she thought that would break me, she clearly didn't remember what kind of fighter she'd trained me to be. And next, I'd uncovered just how long this betrayal had been in motion. I used to think I was paranoid, that little voice whispering in the back of my mind during meetings. Something's off, something's missing. I silenced it for months. But now I can't stop replaying the moments I brushed off. Like the first time Brandon strolled into a design meeting uninvited. He leaned against the wall, chewing gum, nodding like he understood a word of what I was saying. I just wanted to learn from the best, he said with that smug half smile. Diana laughed. I forced one too. Then came the weekly syncs where Diana started canceling last minute. Investor stuff, she'd text. But I'd hear from the engineering team that Brandon had shown up at her office again, alone. He began parroting my phrases in board updates, my phrasing, my frameworks. Disruption through intuitive, frictionless integration. That was my line. I'd scrawled it in my notebook after 3 sleepless nights. Now he was saying it like he came up with it on a coffee run. I told myself it was fine. I still had the patent. I still had the code. No one could take that until I saw the filing. It happened by accident. I was reviewing logistics for a manufacturing run when the assistant forwarded me a scanned PDF to double-check specs. Buried in the attachments was a document I wasn't meant to see, a patent application. It had my name listed as the inventor. But the applicant, the company. That was the first time my stomach truly dropped. I remembered the morning I filed the original version before I ever signed a contract with Diana's firm. I'd walked the envelope to the post office myself. My hands had trembled as I sealed it. I wanted to be sure, just in case. And now I knew why. I dug up my records that night, development logs, time-stamped design files, hand-drawn concept art, email threads from long before Diana's company was registered. Every file whispered the same truth: I didn't work for them when this began. I brought my invention to them, and I had proof. I barely slept that night. My mind ricocheted between anger and regret. How could I have missed this? How did I let it get this far? But a colder part of me, sharper, clearer, began to take over. They thought they could steal from me. They thought if they moved fast enough, if they smiled wide enough, I'd just let it happen. They were wrong. By the time Brandon posted his grateful to join the leadership team selfie on LinkedIn, I was already on the phone with a lawyer. I didn't want revenge. I wanted recognition. I wanted justice. But most of all, I wanted them to realize they hadn't buried me. They'd just lit the fuse, and what came next would shake the ground they built their empire on. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't even text Diana back when she sent a one-line message the next day. Hope you're getting some rest, Ava. Rest. I was building a war room. By Tuesday morning, I had retained Mara Levy, an intellectual property attorney, with a reputation for making billion-dollar companies sweat. Her first words after reading my documents: let's make them regret underestimating you. While the world thought I was licking my wounds, I was quietly compiling everything: development logs, time-stamped design sketches, emails outlining the concept from back when Diana's company didn't even exist. Mara had it all organized into a bulletproof timeline. Chain of custody is everything, she said, and lucky for you, you never gave that up. She was right. I'd never assigned the patent rights, never transferred IP. In fact, I'd insisted the paperwork get sorted after we secure investors. Diana had nodded at the time, too distracted by dollar signs to worry about legalities. And now that oversight would become my weapon. Mara filed an injunction by Friday targeting product distribution, ad campaigns, and investor fund transfers. We didn't just send it to Diana's legal team, we CC'd the main investor. I wanted them to know exactly what they were entangled in, but I wasn't done. I reached out to the investor directly, something Diana never expected me to do. I forwarded the full packet, the proof, the filings, the original prototype specs, with my signature and date months before I ever entered Diana's crumbling office for that first coffee-stained meeting. He responded the same day: need to discuss this urgently. Let's set up a call, the voice in my head whispered. They're going to spin this, try to bury it. But Mara wasn't worried. Let them try, she said. They're sitting on a house of cards. By the end of the week, I had done more in silence than I ever could have done with noise. While Diana posted hashtag leadership quotes on LinkedIn and Brandon strutted around in company merch, I was laying the groundwork for collapse. Then came the press release, the one they thought would seal my fate. They announced Brandon's visionary leadership for the product's public rollout. No mention of me, not even a footnote. They really believed they could rewrite history. And that's when I sent everything to the media. Tech reporters, female founder blogs, the same outlets that had once praised our product for its radical female-led innovation. I made sure they saw the truth. The actual radical story was the one they'd tried to erase. The silence didn't last long. First came the email from a reporter asking for comment, then the investor canceled the launch press event, and then my phone rang. Diana's number flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't need to hear her excuses, but I listened anyway. Ava, she said, her voice carefully trembling. Can we talk? Please, this isn't what I wanted, no. This was exactly what she wanted until it stopped working in her favor, and I was just getting started. Diana didn't stop at one voicemail. By the end of the day, I had 8 missed calls from her and 3 texts that swung wildly between pleading and passive-aggressive. Ava, let's talk. You're blowing this out of proportion. We've always been family. Don't ruin everything you worked for. Family. That word hit like a slap. I remembered the night she toasted me at her wedding, her hand clasping mine as she said, "There's no Ava, no product." Now she wanted to act like she hadn't pulled the rug out from under me in front of a room full of colleagues. I ignored her. But Brandon didn't. He decided to go public. A smug, polished video hit social media 2 days later, him standing in front of the company banner holding the product I created. Hey everyone, just want to say how thrilled I am to lead the next phase of innovation here. I know there's noise out there, some disgruntled voices trying to take credit, but we stand by our team. Real work speaks for itself. I watched it 3 times, bile rising in my throat. Disgruntled voice. That product existed because of my sleepless nights, my code, my mortgage. He didn't even know how the tech worked. The comments exploded, half praising his confidence, half asking where Ava went. But the real damage was behind the scenes. Diana's lawyers emailed my attorney threatening breach of NDA and defamation, claimed I was sabotaging the company, even hinted at reputation damage that could warrant legal consequences. Mara didn't flinch. She sent back a copy of the actual NDA, pointed out that it specifically excluded pre-existing intellectual property not transferred by contract, which we had already proven. Then attached a countersuit notice should they choose to escalate. Still, they tried to spin it. Tech blogs got quiet for a day. Then one published a suspiciously timed article, Internal Rift at Promising Startup May Derail Product Launch. It painted me as a formerly loyal employee who had personal tensions with the CEO's family. Classic deflection. But what Diana didn't count on was what I had already done next. The full dossier, the emails, patent records, voice notes, receipts, had been sent to a trusted journalist I'd worked with before, someone who respected women founders and had a sharp eye for corporate betrayal. Her headline dropped that Friday evening. She built it. They took it. But she had the receipts. Within an hour, the story trended on tech Twitter. Investors started pulling their LinkedIn tags from Diana's posts. Brandon's smug video swarmed with clown emojis and calls for accountability. And then my phone buzzed, an anonymous tip investor group emergency call happening in 15 minutes. They're panicking. I smiled for the first time in days. The walls Diana built with charm and money were crumbling, and all I had done was show the truth. But what came next would bring the entire house down. By Monday morning, the company's logo was no longer on the investor's website. I didn't need insider tips anymore. Everything was unraveling in real time. The story had gained traction far beyond the startup world. News outlets picked it up as a case study in corporate theft, and podcasts debated it as the ultimate David versus Goliath in tech. And the board, they moved fast. Within 72 hours of the article dropping, Diana was removed from her position as CEO. The statement was cold clinical leadership transition in light of governance concerns. But it was everything I needed to see. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee in hand, watching the press conference live stream where Brandon tried to do damage control. He looked like a deer on ice. Gone was the cocky confidence. He stammered his way through a pre-written statement about leadership challenges and product development transitions. The online chat roasted him in real time. One viewer commented, "Did his mommy forget to write the second page and then it got worse for them?" The investor group announced a full audit. Turns out Brandon hadn't just been underqualified. He didn't even have the engineering degree listed on his resume. Just a half-finished business certificate from a private online school. One outlet called it Startup Nepotism Hits Peak Embarrassment. My inbox exploded. Media wanted interviews. Venture capital firms reached out, but I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't doing this for the attention. Then the settlement offer arrived. Diana's legal team proposed a deal quietly off the record. A multi-million-dollar payout and full transfer of patent ownership back to me in exchange for dropping the lawsuit and agreeing to a non-disparagement clause. Mara slid the paper across the table with a smirk. They're waving the white flag. I didn't need a trial. I didn't want to spend years in court while my work gathered dust. What I wanted, my name, my product, my power, was finally back in my hands. We signed the settlement the following week. I never heard from Diana again, not directly. But someone forwarded me a video from a leadership summit she had once been the keynote speaker for. Her name had been scrubbed from the lineup, replaced by TBD. Her empire had cracked. The image she'd built so carefully, mentor, visionary, pioneer, was gone. She tried to spin it, of course, claimed in one interview that it had been a miscommunication blown out of proportion. But the receipts were public. The silence from her former allies was louder than any denial. As for me, I didn't even have to step into a courtroom. I let the truth and the evidence do the talking. And in the quiet that followed, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. But I wasn't done building. My next chapter would be mine alone. The air smelled different on the West Coast. Maybe it was the salt from the bay or the eucalyptus trees outside my new office window. Or maybe it was just the weight I'd left behind, the kind that presses down on your ribs for so long you forget what breathing deeply feels like. I took it in one breath at a time. 6 months had passed since the settlement. I didn't move quietly. I launched something new, my own innovation lab built from the ground up with one unshakable rule: creators own their work. No equity bait and switch. No false promises over glasses of wine. No golden boys parachuting into leadership while others bled behind the scenes. We started small. A handful of developers, most of them women, many with resumes overlooked by the big players. One of them, Talia, showed me a sketch she'd been hiding in her notebook for years. We built it into a prototype in 2 months. "You saw me," she said once, tears in her eyes. "No one else ever saw me. I did. Because I had been her. I funded underdog startups. Partnered with legal clinics that taught young engineers about IP rights. I gave talks not to brag, but to warn. I told them, put it in writing, keep your receipts, protect your brilliance before someone decides it's theirs. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't fighting to be seen. I was seen. On my terms. One morning, as I was reviewing a grant application from a young robotics team in New Orleans, an email pinged into my inbox from Brandon. Subject: opportunity. I stared at the screen for a long moment, unsure if I was reading it right. His message was short, oddly polite. "I've been following your new lab. If you're expanding, I'd be interested in contributing. I've learned a lot lately, and I think we could..." I didn't finish reading. I didn't need to. I closed the message, leaned back in my chair, and turned toward the window. The water shimmered. The sunlight hit my desk just right, casting a glow across the blueprints of our latest prototype. I smiled, not out of spite, not even satisfaction, but clarity. Brandon would always chase things that were never his to begin with. Diana would always rewrite her version of what happened, but none of that mattered anymore. Because I wasn't chasing validation, I wasn't proving anything, I was living proof of what happens when you bet on yourself, of what happens when you refuse to be erased, of what happens when the quietest fighter wins. So I shut my laptop and walked into the lab where the next big idea was already waiting. This time, no one would steal it from me. My heels clicked across the office floor as I stepped into the Monday leadership meeting, coffee in hand, slides prepped, ready to discuss next phase rollout. I didn't even notice the shift in the room until I saw the extra chair at the head of the table. And then Diana's voice rang out. "We're restructuring. Brandon will be stepping into your role, Ava, effective immediately." I blinked. Thought I misheard. "Sorry, what?" Her face didn't flinch. "You've done tremendous work, but my son Brandon will be leading the product division moving forward." I didn't move. Couldn't move. Last Thursday, I'd stood right here presenting the final demo, the one that landed our biggest investor. We'd all popped champagne. Diana hugged me so tight I could feel her heartbeat. Now her eyes didn't even meet mine. Brandon, barely out of college and still smelling like entitlement, gave me a smug nod. "I'll be counting on your notes to help me transition smoothly," he said. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not out of humor, out of disbelief. This has to be a joke, I said, voice tight. I saved this company. You all saw it. Diana leaned forward, her voice syrupy. You've done more than enough, Ava. Take this as a new opportunity for rest. Rest my mind spun. 5 years of grinding. A prototype I bled into. Investor pitches that made my hands shake. Late nights when I slept on the office couch because I didn't have time to commute home. And now they were handing it over to a man who once asked me how Bluetooth worked. I left the room numb. Didn't hear the rest of the meeting. Didn't feel the goodbye hugs from the few stunned coworkers who dared look my way. By noon, my company email was gone. My keycard beeped red. I packed my things in silence. My desk wasn't fancy, just a row of notebooks, a dying succulent, and a photo of me and Diana arms linked at our last product launch. She once said, "You're the backbone of this company." Now she couldn't even say goodbye in person. I carried the box to the parking lot. Cold wind cut through my jacket. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stood there looking down at the cracked lid of the moving box. Discarded. Humiliated. Used. A voice inside me whispered, "You should have seen this coming." But I didn't want to believe it. Not until now. I sat in the car, fingers trembling on the wheel. Then I reached into my folder and pulled out a sheet I'd nearly forgotten my original patent filing, my name, my documentation, dated and signed long before the company even had a logo. They had taken my job, but they didn't realize they'd built their future on something that didn't belong to them. And in that moment, the humiliation curdled into something else, sharp, clear, electric. Resolve. They thought they'd erased me, but they didn't know what I still owned. They didn't know I wasn't done. And they definitely didn't know what I was about to do next. The first time I stepped into Diana's office, it didn't even have chairs that matched. The walls were bare, her desk a scratched leftover from some defunct law firm, and the coffee